Good afternoon. Nick Kirby from Kirby's Car Blog. Today, joined by Maurice Hamilton, journalist of 40 years of experience, 500 over 500 Grand Prix. Um, Initially started as a freelance journalist, working for the Guardian and the Independent, and then went on to be the Observers Motorsport Correspondent between 1990 and 2010. So Morris has got a lot of knowledge, expertise regarding F1. So he joins me today, and I've got some questions. I've written an introduction that will be on the blog post, so you can read up a bit more. So in 1976, a year before you went freelance and left your job, did you attend the British Grand Prix and using the pass that you had made, or as a paying customer?
Yeah, um, you're right. It was the year before I took the plunge, so I was there as I did have. I was. It was a good question that because it really made me think. What was my status at that time? And I've been to every Grand Prix since British Grand Prix since my dad took me in '59, and then I went again in '62 with my dad, and then I went with my mates from '67. I've been to everyone on from then, and in '76. I'd actually written a piece for the Grand Prix program on the Formula's free race, and I'd managed to use that to scrounge some sort of press pass from a guy called Graham Macbeth, who was a very helpful press officer. And I had it wasn't a fully blown press pass, but it was enough to get me in. I don't think it got me into the pits or anything like that, but I was happy with what I had. So I watched the Grand Prix from the media centre. It was the first time I think, yeah, this was the first time that I'd watched the British Grand Prix not from a grandstand seat. I'd always been at a grandstand seat with my mates or with my dad. So this was the first time I was in the working media centre. So it was quite an experience. Of course, a very eventful race to watch.
Yeah, it was. Um, you remember the aftermath?
I remember the bit I remember most was the period when, if you remember, the race was stopped after the shunt at the first corner, and James Hunt had limped back to the pits, and there was a whole furore going on, and I remember just being caught up in the confusion, and not really being able to find out exactly what was going on, but all around me was this buzz of, is he going to be allowed to start? Is he not? The crowd were getting hostile and throwing beer cans in the track, and the whole place was buzzing. I've never experienced anything like that at all at any Grand Prix, never mind the British Grand Prix. So that stands out as a really good memory. We'd never seen anything like this, and it was all adding to this sense of the battle between Ferrari and McLaren, between James and Nicky. It really was stoking that up enormously, and it was, and also the other thing about the British Grand Prix in 1976, in the summer of 1976, it was stinking hot. It was one
Yeah,
of the hottest summers we've had in a long, long time, and it's only been equaled recently, actually. So I remember that added to the whole sense of British Grand Prix, summertime, sunshine, motor racing, and here we've got this phenomenal battle between McLaren and Ferrari. So yeah, it was fabulous. I mean, I loved the whole thing. And at the end, then there was still uncertainty about who had done what and whether,
yeah,
and so it carried on. It was just there was just a buzz the whole day.
fabulous. Do you feel the current generation of F1 drivers have sort of similar kind of personalities to those of the sort of 70s and 80s?
Uh, Deep down, Nick, they probably do, but the problem is today they can't show it because they are under tighter control. So, for example, in '76, James Hunt, let's take him, a classic example, obviously, the renegade sort of driver with loads of personality. There was no such thing as a press officer at McLaren, didn't exist. There was no such thing as PR, didn't exist. So James was his own man. And it was great from the point of view as a journalist. If you wanted to talk to him, you could literally walk up, and if he knew you, he'd talk to you. And today, you have to make an appointment, and you get a 10-minute slot to speak to, let's say, Lewis Hamilton. There's no reflection on Lewis. This is just the way it is.
Yeah.
And then he gives you, when he talks to you, so let's say I want to talk to Lewis Hamilton. I would send an email to Bradley Lord, the head of communications at Mercedes, and Bradley would come back and say, "What's it for?" And I'd explain it's for such and such, and he'd say, "Okay." So let's say I'm going to Saudi the next race on Thursday at Saudi Grand Prix. Come to motorhome 20 past 4. You'll get 10 minutes with Lewis, which would happen. Whereas back in the day with James, he might say, "I'll see you in the afternoon." You never see him again because he's off playing tennis or something. But with this today, you get your appointment. But the one big difference is this, and that is that when you sit down with the driver, the team's PR person puts their tape recorder on the table alongside yours. So the driver knows that's there. So what you're not getting is you're not getting the off the record quote that you would have had previously.
Yeah.
Whereas you'd say to the driver, "Listen, tell me what's going on here." And they'd say, "Well, look, between you and me, and don't write this." And they trust you not to write it. And you get the story. Now they can't say anything. So political correctness, if you like, is restricting the personalities that are bubbling underneath. So yeah, they don't get a chance to show it, I think is the answer to your question.
Right. Do you feel the older generation of F1 drivers would be able to make the most of a current F1 car, given the sort of advances that have been made?
Yes, I do. But it would be, I mean, if you were able to, let's say, put James Hunt or Nicky Lauda or something into one of today's cars, they'd be shocked. They'd be amazed at the cornering speed. The G-forces would be like nothing they'd experienced before. The late braking, like nothing they'd experienced before. So it would take a long time for them, let's say they were their current age, it would take a long time for them to adapt. But all drivers are the best of their generation, of their time, or they are the best. They all adapt. They all learn how to cope. So I think we're given a period of time, they would be able to deal with it in the same way. If you put, let's say, Lewis Hamilton into a 1976 McLaren,
Yeah.
and go drive it around Brands Hatch, which is nice bumps and curves and stuff, he'd be going, "Oh, blimey, there's no grip, and there's no down, there's nothing." But he'd get used to it. He'd soon learn to control it. He would be arriving in the corner too fast because the braking's way back there before compared to what he's got now. So again, he would adapt, and they all could adapt. Yeah, I think they could do it. I think they would be deeply shocked at the huge performance of today's cars, which are, it's phenomenal, absolutely incredible. So they would be surprised by that.
Yeah. Okay, so F1's given us some incredible sporting rivalries. Which has been your personal favourite?
I think, I think you always remember the ones from your early in your career because they have the biggest impact. And I think the James Hunt Nicky Lauda one was fabulous, because there was so much going on, and I think I was lucky enough to get myself to the Canadian Grand Prix and the US Grand Prix at Mosport and Watkins Glen that year, and scrounged the press passes in each case. So I really was in the thick of it towards the end, and the tension at Mosport when just before that James had been thrown out, or he lost his Brands Hatch victory, if you remember, and tension was incredible. So it was a fantastic fight, and I think overall, if you boil it down and look at the championships since then up till now, or fairly recently, it's McLaren and Ferrari have always been at it, the two of them.
Yeah.
And so I think those rivalries all the way through, right up to 2008 with Lewis Hamilton and Felipe Massa, it's always been there. So I've enjoyed all of those. But there's been, Prost and Senna, blimey. What a rivalry that was. Whoa, that was something else. That had an edge to it, a big edge to it, as we all know, and saw the way it all panned out in the end, particularly in 1990 at Suzuka when Ayrton drove into the back of Prost, and then previously to that, Prost had clumsily shoveled Ayrton off the road, tried to off the road at both at Suzuka. So that was an epic year as well.
I suppose with growing up, mine would have been Schumacher Hill.
Yeah.
Where Schumacher went
Yeah,
into Hill and then they both went off, and I think Hill got back to the pits and Schumacher's car was sort of broken to a point which it couldn't be driven.
yeah, yeah. I was heavily involved in that because I was ghosting Damon's book that year, so I was right in the thick of that. And that was a pretty tense year, and particularly the finale at Adelaide was, oof. Yeah, that was again. Yeah, there's been a lot. Jones and Piquet. That's another one. Oh, blimey, those two didn't like each other, and that was a great battle in 1980. That was very, very good, very
Yeah,
good.
Alan Jones won that year, didn't they?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And they had a collision at Montreal, the first
right.
corner. Jonesy turned into him.
So this year marks 40 years since the closest points finish in F1 history. Niki Lauda beat Alain Prost to the title by half a point. What are your sort of memories of that?
That was a nice championship, and I mean that in the best possible way, because they both drove for McLaren. They both had huge respect for each other, and there was no animosity. There was no nasty edge to it. It was a really brilliant championship with two guys going for it, and they really were towards the end. And you had such a contrast in that you had the Prost, who was quicker, and Lauda knew he was quicker and accepted he was quicker. And this was the essence of Niki Lauda, in that he was able to analyze that Prost was quicker, and there was no point in trying to outdo him in qualifying because Alain would find that extra tenth of a second. So Niki would focus on the race and work out how to get the best out of his tires and get the setup. So, for example, in the championship finale in Estoril in Portugal that year, I think Niki was eighth in the grid, and Alain was on the front row. But that was typical, and Lauda just came through slow bit by bit, bit by bit. So it was and that was right tense right to the end as well. But it was a really good championship. You didn't mind which of them won. Let's put it like that, which always is a nice thing because they were both brilliant in their different ways, driving for a team which was 100% fair. They were 50-50 for them both. There was no favoritism at all. And they all worked together. Despite you would have Alain's mechanics and Niki's mechanics, but if they needed to, they'd all help each other out, and which was lovely. So it was a really, as I say, nice championship, and I mean that in the best possible way.
Cool. What are your views on some of the band innovations from F1? Examples being the Brabham BT46, the fan car, active suspension on the Williams, and the Braun double diffuser from 2009.
Yeah, yeah. I love to see these things. To me, that's what Formula One's all about. It's these design people. I'm not a technical guy at all, but I'm so impressed by what the technical guys do. The John Barnards of this world, particularly Adrian Newey, he's just a genius.
Yeah, fantastic designer.
He's just on a different planet. That guy. He should have a knighthood, by the way, because he's just he's unreal. What they do and what they think, I think is brilliant. And Formula One is great at this in drawing out some ingenious solutions. And I think the important thing about your question is that, yeah, okay, it's giving them an advantage, which is not unfair, but it's tough on the rest because they're. So I think it's important that they are allowed to have the benefit of that advantage for a while, not forever. I think I can understand why they get banned eventually, but give them their fair play. Let them have the advantage, the performance advantage that comes with this great thinking that they've had. And the one exception would be, as you mentioned earlier, the BT46B fan car, the Brabham fan car, which was an extraordinary thing and was just going to blow them all, well, literally blow them all away. But it wasn't banned. It was Bernie.
Oh no, they withdrew it, didn't they? Through pressure. Yeah.
And that was Bernie, because and Gordon Murray, the designer, was furious because he'd put so much work into that car, and it was superb. It was unbelievable when it walked away with the Swedish Grand Prix, and you could see that was halfway through the season in '78, and it was going to blow them away. But Bernie was trying to unite the teams at that point because he was just beginning to establish FOCA and all the rest in the back of the FIA, and he didn't want to piss them off. So he knew that if they ran that car, it would annoy the Colin Chapmans of the world. So he said that they should withdraw it, which Gordon was not happy about. So and
Yeah.
I understand why.
He
So
upset Gordon as one person instead of the rest of the paddock as lots of people.
well summed up. Exactly that.
Yeah.
Exactly that. Yes.
Right. Has there been a season while you were working where you just thought it does not get better than this, or have they just sort of improved as time's gone on? Or
I'd say the one where I I really enjoyed it right until the last was 2008, was Lewis Hamilton and Felipe Massa, because we'd had that mess in '07 with the Spygate and all the rest of it. Was horrible.
yeah, yeah,
It was really, really terrible. The whole thing was awful. And to have these two at it and to go right to the end, to the last corner of the last race, and the atmosphere in Brazil was superb. I remember turning up on race day and thinking, this is just brilliant, because the sun was shining, the Brazilians were going mad, the atmosphere there was fantastic. You had Lewis Hamilton, British driver, in the McLaren, and they were doing a fantastic job recovering from the mess of '07. And the ingredients were there, and it was just wonderful. And in Interlagos, as a theatre of motor racing, for this to be played out was fantastic. And I remember being there early in the morning, and the samba bands were already playing in the grandstands, and the place was buzzing. And just thinking, this is brilliant. This is fantastic. This is what we want. We're going to have the championship settled today, after those 17 races, I think it was. Finally, we're going to have the result. But, you know, that's a great thing going in on the last day of any championship. So you've been going for months and months and months, and Willie won't he, Willie won't he, and you think today we're going to know. We're going to know who's the world champion, and that's always a nice feeling. So there, it was particularly effective. That feeling, it was lovely.
brilliant. What was it like working with Murray Walker?
It was a treat. It was an absolute treat, because here was the man who, common with everybody else, I'd listened to him commentate. He was part of my growing up. He was Mr. Motor Racing. He was the voice of motorsport to me, in the same way you had Peter Allis, the voice of golf, or Peter O'Sullivan, the voice of horse racing. Murray was our man. And when I went to the 1973 Monaco Grand Prix as a fan, with my dad, we went on Page and Moy tour, and on the flight down, it was, the seats were 3x3, and Murray happened to draw, unluckily for him, drew the seat beside us. And so I got talking to him, and my dad and I got talking to him, and he was just lovely. And then to find that when I finally get into the sport, that I'm working with this guy, and when I appeared in the scene, and so I'm a sort of shy, sort of trying to find my way and not saying anything to anybody, Murray came up and said, hello. He said, you're the just new boy that you're, and he knew I was working with a journalist called Ian Young. I said, yeah, I'm working with Ian. He said, oh, I'm Murray. How do you do? And he was just so friendly. And then to get to work with him, finally do a commentary with him in '07, when I was doing BBC Radio 5 Live. Murray had retired, and David Croft, the normal commentator, I was on maternity leave that race, and Murray came. We called him in for that one race, so I actually sat beside him in the commentary box and did it, and it was just brilliant. It was absolutely. I mean, he was so passionate and waving his arms about and the whole thing, and it was just. I was bliss. It was wonderful. Yeah, I loved it. Loved it.
Right. Which F1 engine do you think has the best noise?
Got to have 12 cylinders.
Yeah.
And 12 cylinders. That beautiful mellow sound. V8's nice, but a 12, or a 10's nice too, but a 12's even more mellow sound. So we're talking about any Ferrari V12 or the Alpha V12 in 78, 77, 78. Lovely, beautiful sound, beautiful sound. So I think anything with 12 cylinders, the Ferrari sports car, the 330 P2, P3, P4, with a V12, just the nicest sound, because I actually saw one. I actually was at some event where there was one running. Oh, I remember thinking, that just sounds like heaven. It's just that it's not a strain. It's just mellow. It's music, you know. I love the sound of a V8, by the way. Our racing V8 is fantastic.
Yeah.
Chevy, big Chevy, like back in the day, Formula 5000. Love the sound of those. But there's something mellow and musical about a V12 engine, particularly a Ferrari. And I think the fact that it's Ferrari adds to it, don't you? I think it just
Yeah.
makes it a bit better. I don't know. It's just maybe it's just a romantic thing, but yeah.
Have you got a favorite livery for F1?
Oh, I must say I did always like the John Player Special, black
Yeah.
and gold. I thought that looked really, really nice. Much as I was a bit against having to call it a John Player Special, not a Lotus, I didn't quite agree with that. But I thought the car looked nice. The Jordan 191, the green Jordan, the first Jordan, lovely looking car, nice car, looked nice in the livery. The McLaren, the West McLaren, the silver, I always thought was very tasteful.
The Hackney Coulthard
That's the one.
ones. Yeah.
That's right. Oh, it's very tasteful. That I thought, yeah, it looks sweet. Yeah. Not one particularly makes me go, ooh, no. I think those are the three I would pick out. Yeah.
You got a favorite track that when you're on
Well,
or even Britain?
well, all right. In Britain, in Brands, I think.
Just overall.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
In Britain, first Brands and Oulton Park, I think is wonderful. I love Oulton Park. Just a great circuit. But from the point of view of Formula One, doing Grand Prix, I loved anywhere with atmosphere. So immediately you're narrowing it down to Monza, which is unreal. I mean, the atmosphere there on race day is fantastic. Even though it's a very simple circuit, the passionate. And then Interlagos. Interlagos is brilliant. I mean, that's a great circuit as well. Very, very difficult circuit. Although it's simple in many ways, it's quite hard, and it's good. You can watch, you can stand up high and watch, look down on it. But the atmosphere there is mad, completely mad on race day. And I think anything like that adds to it. As a place to go and just be at and work and enjoy, I always like Melbourne because it was the first race of the season usually.
Yeah.
We were going in there autumn, so the weather was nice. It's near the city, easy to get to. You didn't have to hire a car. Lots of food and restaurants nearby, and the Australian crowd, very knowledgeable, very enthusiastic, and not a bad track. So yeah, a nice place to be, Melbourne, really.
Brilliant. Have you got ever had any really difficult drivers to interview?
Yeah, Kimi. Kimi Räikkönen. Absolutely impossible. And two of us tried it. The late Alan Henry and I sat down together with him, and it was such hard work. he wasn't being rude. He just was no, I don't know, yeah, okay. Well, and it was all monotone, and just we knew it was going to be like that. We'd rather hope that the two of us could get a conversation going, but it didn't quite work out like that. So Kimi was difficult. Surprising, perhaps, Damon Hill in the early days in 93, 94, when he was a bit unsure of himself and a bit ill at ease, was quite a hard interview. You'd have to draw it out of him. So different to the man today. I interviewed him about 10 years ago, I think, after he retired, and he utterly brilliant and eloquent and fantastic. But his first year as Formula One driver, he was tricky because he was very guarded and very
perhaps nervous.
Yes, he was. So he was quite hard, Damon. But I mean that in the nicest possible way because he's a lovely, lovely man, but quite hard.
And on the flip side of that, have you got any particular favourites to interview?
Oh yeah, Mario Andretti, just fabulous. Just because he knows what you want, and he gives you the stories and he gives you the anecdotes, and he's got a lovely way of expressing it. And the other guy I always loved interviewing was Niki Lauda, because you would get a straight answer with him. With Niki, you had to have your questions ready. You had to know what you're going to talk about. You had to say, I want to talk to you about this, and this. And you go, okay. And then you go straight in and you get straight answers, honest answers. And you would say to him, say that there would be something going on in the paddock, and you'd be hearing one side of the story and then the other, and you didn't know which way to take it. So you'd go to Nicky and you'd say, listen, this business is going on, this and this, what do you think? And he'd just go, very simple, and he'd boom, straight down the middle, tell you exactly what was going on, and you go, you're right. Yeah, of course. He was a pleasure, absolute pleasure, and very funny. I mean, he would tell you some very funny stories. So Mark Webber, terrific interview, great guy to talk to, very straight again, yeah, and strangely, Mika Hakkinen was very difficult when he was racing, but when out of racing, and since he's retired, he's fabulous. He's really funny and really, really good and full of stories that you say, well, why didn't you tell me that at the time, Mika? So he's good, yeah. But Mario Andretti is just outstanding, outstanding.
Okay, so there have been times where teams have dominated seasons. Do you think we'll see this with Red Bull, or do we think other teams will take the constructors for 2024 season?
I wish I could tell you, Nick, that there'd be somebody else, but I can't see it because I know the gap when you get a formula, and the longer it goes, the gap narrows and the rest catch up to the guy that's the team that's got it right at the first place. But Adrian Newey just keeps raising the bar. And I mean, this latest car, it's different again. It's not just a development, it's a different car. So, and provided he's got it right, which I can see no reason why he hasn't, I can't see anybody getting close, unfortunately, because we need it. We desperately, I think Formula One needs a new face up at the front on the top of the podium, because the casual viewer who we rely on a lot, they're getting, oh, well, Verstappen again, all right, when they go off and don't watch the race. So we need it. And I wish I could say it's going to be Ferrari. I wish I could say they've managed to get their tire degradation under control. I wish I could say Mercedes have finally sorted out the side pods and they've now got it working. I hope they have. They might have. But the early signs, and I know testing's not the be-all end-all, but when Max Verstappen does 50 laps in the first day and is 0.2 faster than anybody else of testing, oof, I can't see it, Nick. I can't see it.
So, what are your thoughts about what's to come in F1? Gunther Steiner being sacked from Haas, Lewis Hamilton moving from Mercedes to Ferrari, and F1 not allowing Andretti and Christian Horner. I mean, it's the season hasn't begun yet, and that there's so much sort of already happened.
It's been the maddest closed season that I can remember. It's just been for the reasons you've just said going on. Gunther Steiner, first of all, I don't think it's going to make any difference. He's a character. He swears a lot, but I don't think he brings anything else to it. He hasn't got a particularly good track record. He's very popular, and I understand why. But as a guy driving the team, I don't think he'd be missed, to be perfectly honest. The other stories are much more serious. Well, the Lewis to Ferrari is fabulous. I mean, I think good luck to him. I'm surprised, very surprised. Was caught by surprise, as I think Mercedes were. But he's coming to the end of his career. He's still got it in him, in my view. And if Ferrari can give him a half decent car, he'll go for it. So I'm
just dependent on it's just dependent on their strategy, I suppose, if they can get that right.
Yeah, exactly. They've got, as I said earlier, their strategy has been a bit questionable, and they've got a few problems with the car. But I think Fred Vasseur is getting there. I think it's good that he's given another season to get settled in. So I'm hopeful then that will be his third year with them when Lewis joins. Yeah, I think it's great. I'm delighted actually for him, because I think it's worth a punt, and I think it's good for us all to see. And Ferrari's still got that magic, hasn't it? I mean, I remember when Nigel Mansell went in 1989. It was a terrific story, and look what he did. He won the first Grand Prix with them. So with Ferrari, so that's lovely. The Christian Horner thing. Look, we just have to wait and see what the inquiry says. I mean, I just don't want to make any judgment on that. The only thing I'll say is it's a little unsettling for Red Bull, but like any top team, like, do you remember in '86 when Frank Williams had his very serious accident, and just before the start of the season, and everybody said, "Oh, how's that going to affect Williams?" Well, the team is so well structured that they carried on and they won, they nearly won the championship. I was going to say they won the championship. They came close to winning the championship. So, and I think Red Bull's the same. I think it's a distraction, and the media will be there asking questions. But as a team, I think they'll just get on with it. So I don't see that as being an issue. But most serious of all, in my view, is the Andretti affair. I think the way Formula One, the organization, has handled this has been truly appalling. I think the statement they issued explaining the reasons was unbelievable, unbelievably gauche and arrogant. And I'm staggered that they actually thought it was all right to release that. Even if they thought that, they shouldn't have said it. I'm appalled by it all. I think whether Andretti could have done a job or not, they should have given a chance. Of all, you need somebody. And I mean, how can you have Liberty Media, owned by Disney, an American company, and they're focusing on the American market, turning down General Motors, Andretti, all of that, Cadillac, all these big names? I do not understand it. I don't understand it. And they've left the door slightly open, and I hope the massive negative publicity that they've got, and deservedly so, will make them go, all right, well, let's have another think about this.
Yeah. All right. So thoughts back to Lewis Hamilton. Do you think he'll be able to win an 8th title?
I do. I think he's up for it. I think he's amazing, absolutely amazing. Because his 17th consecutive season. You think about that.
Yeah.
On the front line. That's amazing. That is astonishing. And he's as sharp and as hungry as ever. And I think if Mercedes give him a half decent car this year, we'll see him win races if the car is reasonable. He's got it in him. And yeah, I don't doubt it for a second. And what I always admire about Lewis Hamilton is when the chips are down, when things go wrong, he comes back stronger than ever. When he's had an accident or there's been an incident or he's done something or his engine's blown up, and I'm going back now 10 years and more. He comes back stronger than ever. So I think he's capable of it if he's given the equipment, which is another story entirely.
That's great. I think we'll wrap up there. Just thank you very much for your time and agreeing to join me today.
Not at all, Nick. Pleasure. Thank you.